Hello, everybody. Welcome to Tuesday's edition of the Southside Beat. Flying solo today, Chris Halicke. Thank you for joining today. Corey Kristen out today, but not because he's not working or anything. He was covering OTAs on the South Side today, and then had to run straight over to the North Shore to go cover stuff at PNC Park for Pirates and. So he's a busy guy. So we're going to talk Steelers OTAs here. And so thank you for joining. Appreciate you guys. And it's OTAs, final week of OTAs, man. William says it's the Chris show. Yeah, well, I try not to make it about myself too much. But final week of OTAs, it's just another week closer, man. Another week closer to getting closer to actual football, not just football in shorts. It's June now, so the calendar, we're getting closer. We're getting closer. It's exciting. But the really exciting thing for Steelers fans today isn't just the fact that it's the final week of OTAs. Matthew right here says it in the comments. Cam's back. Cam Heyward returned to the Steelers today. He was on the South Side, participated in OTAs, didn't just show up, participated in practice, spoke to the media, number of things, man. Like it was like he never left, I guess. But pretty interesting development in the situation because you'd think, okay, Cam's back after not being there for the first 2 weeks of OTAs. Now OTAs are voluntary; nobody has to be there. It's good for the team leaders to be there, but Cam Heyward is seeking a contract extension. He's got he's obviously got 1 year left on his deal, worth more than $22 million against the cap this season. Lots of fans have been like, okay, that seems pretty hefty for Cam Heyward, especially since he's coming off of a season in which he was very, very injured, missed 6 games due to injury. So not going to OTA is kind of a tactic of, maybe this will help, push some things, get some things rolling in terms of looking for a contract extension. Just got the 1 year left, but no new contract. Cam did say that there's no new contract. He's not there because they've worked things out on that front, but because he's a team leader and he, felt like he needed to be there. I think that really settles the question of whether or not he's going to show up for mandatory minicamp. That is a tactic that some players will use. They'll bite the bullet and pay the fines that they have to in order to send a message that they want a new contract or do whatever they can to get the money that they're looking for. It doesn't look like Cam is going to go that route. If he shows up for OTAs. Now, then again, we'll know that for sure once minicamp gets here and to see if Cam Heyward's actually there or if he does something like holding in, like some players do, like they show up, they take part in the individual drills, like the position drills and stuff. But then when it comes to team workouts, like offense versus defense and stuff like that, they sit out. That's more of the hold-in tactic. That's what you saw TJ Watt do a few years ago, what Deontay Johnson did, whatever he was negotiating his contract 2 years ago. But with Cam Heyward showing up for voluntary OTAs here in the final week of OTAs, pretty good indication that it doesn't look like he's going to be a holdout or hold in. But obviously we'll see. This is what contract negotiations are like. Sometimes certain things are done, but then they can take a left turn and then, just because it looks like it's going a certain trajectory, doesn't necessarily mean it will. So I would think, and Travis says, he'll be taken care of. I would think that the Steelers and Cam Heyward work something out. I would think they do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it will, but again, my gut says that they probably get something done. Cam, I think, said he wants to play another 3 seasons. I think more importantly, the thing with Cam, especially when he spoke today, was that number one, he wanted to, he wants to stay in Pittsburgh. He wants to be, he called it a one helmet guy, when it comes to his career. And so that would obviously mean a lot for his legacy, just to know that he was a Pittsburgh Steeler for his entire career, that he didn't, have those final years, in some other jersey where it would just look weird. And you look back on it 10 years later and you're like, holy crap, I forgot Cam Heyward was even, it's kind of like the Franco Harris in a Seahawks jersey type situation, like, man, I completely forgot he even played for him. But, at the same time, Cam believes that he's still a top 5 guy at his position. And when you believe that you're a player of that caliber, you seek to be paid that way. Now, does that mean that there's no chance for some sort of hometown discount or age discount or something like that? Not saying that. I'm not going to sit here and speak for Cam or try to come up with some sort of numbers in which I think are fair for both sides. We know that when a player has accomplished everything that he's accomplished, you typically get paid. That typically plays a good amount, years of service. There's certain things of like, what have you done throughout your career in terms that plays a role into what you end up getting paid. But then again, the team also has to pay players based off of what they are going to do throughout the life of that contract. And if he's going to play another 3 years and he's age 35 right now, you have to begin to wonder, okay, when is the play going to deteriorate? Now, you could already say the play is already deteriorated. It did last year. To Cam's defense, he played injured all season. He had a groin injury that he suffered, I think, in training camp, if I'm not mistaken. It was before the season started. And then he ends up getting hurt. He sits out 6 weeks. In the games that he did play, he wasn't healthy, pretty much playing on one leg. And so we did not see Cam Heyward last year. We saw a shade of Cam Heyward, and it wasn't because he was fully healthy and dude just couldn't play anymore. He was very, very injured, right? And so you can look at that one of two ways. You can be like, okay, great. If Cam's healthy, then we expect Cam to be Cam. And shoot, man, like we can't just automatically assume that if he's healthy, he can't play, because when we saw him play last year, he was injured. So when you look at this year, you have to think, okay, is he going to stay healthy? Because the older you get, I can attest to this just from being a 36-year-old man turning 37 in less than 2 months. The older you get, the harder it is to do certain things. And this is just speaking of somebody who doesn't play a sport like football for a living. I'm talking about, I just sometimes will randomly stretch and all of a sudden a muscle will tighten up on me the way it never did whenever I was 24 or 27 or even 32, right? Sometimes I will wake up just randomly hurting. I didn't do anything the day before. It's just part of getting older. And so then you take into the account that, okay, he's a professional athlete. He takes, the best care of his body you possibly can. But there's a lot of mileage there. And so you have to take those risks into account, right? You have to take that possible risk into account. Doesn't mean that he's not worth a certain amount of money, because if he is healthy, he very, very well could still play. Strength doesn't necessarily go away, right? You can maintain strength. Just look at James Harrison, right? That dude's probably stronger now than he ever was whenever he played. But you get slower as you get older. It's just not as easy to keep up with guys who recover faster and easier. When you're in your 20s, it's just science. Lori here says old man strength. You can maintain strength. But certain things deteriorate as you get older. You lose speed. You lose quickness. That deteriorates. That's something that you just can't fight. Obviously, recovery. Your body doesn't recover quite as well as it did when you were in your 20s. But again, when we're looking at how the Steelers should pay Cam Heyward, I think, like I said, if I'm listening to my gut, I think they end up working out something. It doesn't necessarily, it's not always worked out in the past with certain players, like certain players that will hit legendary status. It didn't work out with Troy Polamalu near the end of his career. It's just, it's unfortunately the business part of the game. You just can't automatically assume, because everything has always been hunky-dory, that everything is just going to stay that way. Sometimes teams have to make business decisions, and there have been some Steelers in the past who haven't always had that ride off in the sunset type end to their Steelers career. Could that happen for Cam Heyward? Should it happen for Cam Heyward? There's a very, very good case that it should happen for Cam. He's the current Walter Payton Man of the Year. Wow, Walter Payton Pan of the Year. That is not an award. Walter Payton Man of the Year. And very deservedly so. Probably should have won it before he won it this year. But you can't necessarily pay a guy just based off of nostalgia or based off of what they've done. You kind of also have to weigh in, as I said before, you have to weigh in what they're going to do. And so maybe if the Steelers have a guy such as Keanu Benton take a larger role than he did last year, and there's very, very good reason to expect something like that to happen. Mike Tomlin always expects more, like a significant jump out of the year two guys. That's always something that he expects. Number one, they're young, they're talented, especially when you're looking at that particular draft class, the 23 draft class. That include Broderick Jones and Joey Porter Jr. and Keanu Benton and Nick Herbig, Darnell Washington. He expects those guys to take a big step. He always expects the year two guys to take a big step. And when you look at that crop of year two guys coming in, Keanu Benton's one of them. And so if Keanu Benton can take a larger role, maybe Cam Heyward doesn't have to play as many snaps. That helps keep him healthy. So maybe it can work out. But then again, if he's not playing as many snaps, how do you pay somebody fairly for something like that? It's just, this is why I'm not a GM. This is why I don't work in an NFL front office, because there are a lot of people that have to make the decision, on those things and have to do the negotiating. So, but if there's ever a player that I think the Steelers should try to work something out for, Cam Heyward's one of them, for sure. And if there's any player that I'm not going to doubt, it's Cam Heyward. So, pretty good place to swap. We can definitely talk more about Cam, but Lori comes in with a pretty good question, especially given some news today out of San Francisco. Lori asks, hey, Chris, what are the realistic chances that the Steelers take a wild swing on a guy like Brandon Ayuk as a one-year rental, go all in for this year? So really quick, for news out of San Francisco, the 49ers signed Christian McCaffrey to a 2-year, I think $38 million extension. That's $19 million a year for a running back, which obviously that's very, very high. So a lot of people are getting new contracts in San Francisco, and Brandon Ayuk's not one of them yet. When I look at Brandon Ayuk and the Steelers, if the price is right, now see that they're kind of in lies the answer to your question. Because if the 49ers get to a certain point where they're like, you know what, we're not going to be able to work out anything with Brandon Ayuk. It's just not going to happen. We're not going to be able to get him. Let's recoup and get whatever we can before he just walks in free agency and we get nothing. So if the price is right and the Steelers don't have to give up very valuable assets like a first-round pick or second-round pick or anything like that, and they're able to give up a little less, then maybe it's worth it to just go all in for this year and just pay him his $14.1 million. Let him walk in free agency. Bada bing, bada boom. Just, like you said, go all in for this year. But if you have to, in order to land a player of that caliber, you most likely have to give up some significant assets. And if that's the case, a 1-year rental doesn't make a lot of sense for the Steelers. It really doesn't matter. I'm not a big fan of that move anyway. There's a reason why, like if you look at baseball, a sport in which you see a lot of players traded as rentals, especially at the trade deadline in July. You see the returns sometimes be a little bit underwhelming. You're like, wow, that guy, like one of the best hitters in baseball or one of the best pitchers in baseball, and that's all you got for him? It's like, well, because they're only guaranteed to have him for 2 months and plus playoffs. That's it. They're not guaranteed to have him any longer than that. They could have him for longer. They could sign him to a new contract, but that's not guaranteed. And so football, you typically don't see that move made very often. It can happen. If, like I said, the Steelers don't have to part with significant assets. Sure. Yeah. 1-year rental works out great. But most likely, in order to land a player of Ayuk's caliber, you're going to have to give up something significant, in which it just makes the most amount of sense to not only trade for him, but to also negotiate a new contract and keep him here, keep him in Pittsburgh for multiple seasons. Because then you can essentially have, at least for 2 years, you can have Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens, which would be one of the most dangerous wide receiver duos in the NFL. In my opinion. So, yeah, I definitely think it's something that's worth entertaining. It depends on what the 49ers are asking, and it depends on what the 49ers are thinking. The 49ers still may not be thinking at all about trading Brandon Ayuk, but they might be thinking maybe we can part with Deebo Samuel. Maybe if the price is right, we can get rid of Deebo and then use the money that we recoup from that trade to pay Brandon. To pay Ayuk. So, and Lori, follows up, says that they would automatically become a real contender, in my opinion. Honestly, I'm of the belief, and some people might not agree with this, and that's fine. I'm of the belief that, yes, a second wide receiver, like legitimate wide receiver to line up opposite George Pickens, would put this offense into a different realm. Again, it really all depends on the quarterback play. And that's something that, even though I'm more optimistic about this quarterback room than I was about the quarterback room that we watched for the past 2 seasons, I think this quarterback room is going to be better. It really depends on the quarterback play. It almost doesn't matter if you trade for Brandon Ayuk or Cortland Sutton or DK Metcalf or any of these other receivers. If the quarterback play is still subpar, if the quarterback play is still bad, then it really doesn't matter who's out there catching passes. The quarterback play matters a little bit more than the receiver position, because if the Steelers don't get one of these guys, and it is Van Jefferson or Calvin Austin or one of these other guys, Quez Watkins or anybody else who is that second guy outside, or if maybe Roman Wilson proves us all wrong and he can line up outside and absolutely hang out there at the NFL level, no matter how that looks. Again, the quarterback play is what really, really matters. It really is, because that is essentially what the Steelers need in order to really compete. They either need the quarterback play to be better. I mean, you can look at last year and be like, oh, well, they were 10-7 and went 5-1 in the AFC North with crappy quarterback play, a bad offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator is better. The quarterback room should be better. The defense probably won't be as banged up with injuries. They should be better, right? Well, should be, but the AFC is still stacked, and the schedule is now much, much harder than it was last season. So, here's a good question. Would you trade James Daniels in a deal for Deebo or Ayuk? I don't know if I would necessarily trade James Daniels. I would trade Dan Moore I would not trade James Daniels. And the reason why is I don't want to automatically assume that a 4th-round pick that played Division II college football can just automatically come in day one and become starting right guard. Now, maybe Nate Herbig could be that guy. Maybe Nate Herbig could be the starting right guard if you traded James Daniels. But to me, the offensive line, it creates a hole up front. It creates uncertainty up front, right? Right now with the offensive line, the uncertainty is very, very minimal. Center got better, right? Just by drafting Zach Frazier, they're better at center. Guard is solid with Sayamalu and James Daniels. Tackle is significantly improved now with Troy Fautanu. And it's amazing what one guy can do, because even if Dan Moore is still there, you have either Fautanu or Jones or Dan Moore as your third tackle. And that to me is great. That's a good thing, right? If Dan Moore is essentially the backup tackle, but I don't even want to call him a swing tackle because he can't play the right side. But if, let's just say, he's the backup left tackle and it's Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, great. If Dan Moore starts off the season as the starting left tackle and Broderick Jones starts on the right side and Fautanu is the swing tackle to start, which it wouldn't surprise me if that's the way things begin this season, just because even Broderick Jones wasn't a starter day one. Either way, the tackle position looks a lot better. If you take James Daniels out of there, it creates a significant uncertainty on the offensive line, and I don't think that's necessary. You take out Dan Moore, you at least have legitimate, okay, you've got 2 tackles. You'd like to have a good third tackle behind them, but you at least got Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, 2 first-round picks right there, bada bing, bada boom, no problem. James Daniels, it creates an uncertainty. That uncertainty is either Nate Herbig or it's Mason McCormick, which I like Mason McCormick a lot, but he's still a 4th-round pick that played Division II college football. Just don't want to automatically assume that he can just come in and earn significant snaps right away. Maybe he can. Not saying he can't, but you don't just go into a season thinking, just automatically assuming that. So I don't think James Daniels is a good. Maybe things change by the trade deadline. Maybe by the trade deadline, even if the Steelers are in a position where they're in a good spot, they're right there in the playoff mix or whatever, and maybe Mason McCormick is absolutely a guy, or Nate Herbig is absolutely a guy. Maybe they can't afford to part ways with James Daniels. Maybe they can, but we'll see. That's something that I think would be more possibly addressed in trade deadline. Barber asks, with every day that goes by, Chris, does the asking price and package go down on wide receiver? I would think so, and I think that's why you haven't seen a trade yet of any of these guys, not just the Steelers trading for one, but like any of these guys that have been in trade rumors haven't been traded yet. Brandon Ayuk still in San Francisco. Courtland Sutton still in Denver. DK Metcalf still in Seattle. T. Higgins is still in Cincinnati. Like, all those guys are still there. They haven't been traded. But because they could be traded with a post-June 1 designation, and the teams could save the cap space just as they can right now. They could have done that before June 1, just made the trade with a post-June 1 designation and still save the same amount of cap space, but teams tend to wait to hold on to the leverage. And I would think that the longer things go, yes, the asking price probably goes down, which is why I think you haven't seen anything happen yet. Omar Khan has proven this offseason that he's willing to be patient for certain things. That's the way it worked out with Justin Fields. His patience paid off there, because even though the original plan, especially once they were all in on signing Russell Wilson, the plan wasn't to sign Russell Wilson and then turn around and trade for Justin Fields. The plan was to have a competition between Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett's trade request forced their hand. So, but that's why you do your due diligence as a general manager. That's why you talk. Whenever there's a report that comes out, yes, like Justin Jefferson signs his mega contract to reset the receiver market, and there's a report that comes out that says Omar Khan called the Vikings to ask about Justin Jefferson. Yeah, I could have told you that. That's a GM doing his job. That's a GM literally just doing his job. See what the asking price is. And if they tell you, screw off, we're not trading Justin Jefferson. Are you kidding me? He's the best receiver in football. Okay. Again, the worst they're going to say is no. It's just hilarious. Yeah, it's Jay Mood says I called the Vikings about that too. I think all 31 GMs probably called the Vikings and said, "Hey, what's the asking price for Justin Jefferson?" They probably all gave him all 31 GMs the same answer. No, this ain't happening. It's just the GM doing his job. So it's just funny, man. Here, let's go through the comments. Here, we're kind of getting near the end here. Let me try to hit up on a couple of questions. Try to always do that whenever we fly solo, because I don't want to just sit here and babble, and I already have for 26 minutes. Yeah, let's see. Attention fan says they were never going to trade for Justin Jefferson after drafting a new quarterback. They were never going to trade for Justin Jefferson either way. That was never going to happen. Justin Jefferson was never going to be traded. I don't care what any reports said about anything. Justin Jefferson was never going to get traded. Whenever they moved on from Kirk Cousins and we're going to have to pay him that, especially once they drafted JJ McCarthy, like quarterback of the future, rookie contract, now you can afford to pay your receiver stupid money, which is exactly what they did. Let's see. It's a good question. Travis asks, who would Russ rather throw to, DK or Sutton? Well, I mean, I would assume Sutton. I don't know. Maybe DK. I don't know. Probably either one. I think Russell Wilson probably be, I don't know. I was thinking Sutton maybe it's just because of the recency, but shoot, man. I don't know. Probably either one. Probably a good question to ask Russ, but he wouldn't answer that right now because players typically don't answer questions about, hypotheticals and stuff. That's actually probably one of the things that PR kind of tells them, like, no. And actually, I don't even know if it's possible for players. I know coaches and stuff can't talk about players on other teams. Like when it comes to like possibly acquiring certain players, like they're not allowed to speak. I don't know if players are actually allowed to do that. The same rules might not apply. I'd have to look, but I'd probably say either one. Obviously, DK Metcalf is a little bit more of a freak, like athletic freak. My computer froze up for a second. So if I froze, I'm sorry. Good old 2014 MacBook Air running right here. But yeah, if DK is obviously a little bit more of an athletic freak, Cortland Sutton might be a better complementary piece where George Pickens could be the guy. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, I did freeze up. Good old 2014 MacBook Air, man. Running oh so efficient. Thank you so much. Like my entire computer froze. Like I couldn't even like move my mouse. It wasn't like I just saw myself frozen. Like the entire computer froze up. That's hilarious. Yeah. William asks, how old is Cam? I believe he's 35 right now. He might even turn 36 before the start of the season. I can look that up real quick for you. Pro Football Reference. Cameron Heyward. Cameron Heyward is 35. No, he just turned 35 on May 6th. So he is 35 years old. He will be 35 throughout the entire 2024 season. So You guys, oh, my hotspot froze. No, it was me. It was me. It's definitely not my internet. If anything ever happens with my internet, it's because somebody cut my line outside, because I have fiber internet. So like I have phenomenal speeds and everything. So if anything ever happens, it's because somebody snipped it. Let's see here. That's bad. Has the right answer from Russell Wilson. Russ would say he wants to throw to George and Van and Calvin and Roman and Pat. That's exactly right. Right now, if you were to ask Russell Wilson that question, that's exactly how he would answer it. I'd be really excited about playing with these guys, man. Like, I could. Yeah. Let's see. All right, good question to end on here. Randy asks, because this is something that kind of comes up quite a bit. Randy asks, Russell Wilson is a hard worker, but how much of a challenge is it being 5'11"? Quarterback has to be able to see our open receivers through the huge line. Well, the first part of that question, I would, and Jay Moods with a really good comment here. He is dialed in on the PR front. Yes, he is. Russell Wilson's PR team is on point. Russell Wilson has obviously had a borderline Hall of Fame career being the same height that he's always been. So one way you can look at it is like, well, he's made a living doing it anyway. Now, when you look at Russell Wilson and you look at the strengths of his game, a lot of it has been built on his athleticism, his ability to make plays with his legs. And that's not just running with the ball. That's obviously also getting out of the pocket, extending plays, and making throws outside the pocket. That's when Russell Wilson's always been at his best. It's a lot like Ben Roethlisberger was whenever he was younger. Ben Roethlisberger played a lot of that backyard football type stuff too. The vast majority of Ben's best throws in the early stages of his career were whenever he extended the play, whenever he broke out of a sack or completely trucked a would-be pass rusher and made a play outside the pocket. Now, there are obviously certain throws that he made throughout his career, especially early on, that he made from the pocket. Probably most popular, the throw to the game-winning touchdown to Antonio Holmes in the Super Bowl. Not saying that those throws didn't happen, and Russell Wilson can make elite throws from the pocket. But yes, the vast majority of the best plays have come from outside the pocket. The difference there, when you look at like the two parallels, because Ben played a very similar way when he was younger. Russell Wilson, that's how he's made, how he's made his living. The difference is that Ben Roethlisberger was 6'5", 240. And as he aged, he could afford to become more of a pocket passer because he had the size to be able to hang in the pocket and to make throws from the pocket and to break down defenses from the pocket. And that's exactly what Ben Roethlisberger did. It's why he won 2 passing titles during that stage of his career, because he got to the point where he could throw the ball 50 times a game and the offense could still be a well-oiled machine. It also really helped when you had the best receiver in football and one of the 3 best running backs in football. That helps too. With Russell Wilson, he doesn't have that luxury, because you're right. When you're 5'11", you can't just hang in the pocket. You're not going to be able to see defenses. You're not going to be able to break down defenses the same way. So Russell has been kind of forced to keep playing the way he's always played, which I think is why you start to see you see more throws in which he gets the ball out quicker. But that doesn't always happen, because when you look at his time to throw, it's one of the longest in the league. So what does that tell you? It tells you that Russell probably can make certain throws from the pocket, but those are typically coming out quick. But he still likes to play hero ball. And so you're probably going to have a lot of games. If you weren't a fan of the Steelers from 2004 through 2011, you're going to get an introduction into a little bit, not with quite the elite talent, but you're going to get a little taste of what it was like to be a Steelers fan during that time, when Ben would drive you absolutely insane one play and then wow you the next play. Because there would be some plays in which you're like, dude, just get rid of the ball. live to fight another down, but Ben would never do that. Russell will play the same type of hero ball, right? That's what he's going to do. He's going to have some plays that are going to drive you absolutely crazy. You're going to pull your hair out. But then all of a sudden, he's going to make a play in which he hits George Pickens on a 50-yard bomb, or he hits Calvin Austin on a 50-yard bomb. And you're going to be like, oh, okay, well, that's where the upside comes with Russell Wilson. So, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Russell. It's interesting to see how it's going to play out in Arthur Smith's offense, because while I think the quarterback play will be better than it was with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky and Mason Rudolph collectively, I'm not saying better than Mason Rudolph, because there are some ardent Mason Rudolph defenders out there who would be like, no, Mason Rudolph. No, I'm just saying collectively, the quarterback play sucked over the past 2 years. 25 touchdowns in 2 seasons. The quarterback play was terrible. I think the quarterback play will be better, but the question is like, what's the ceiling? Because I like what some things that Russell Wilson can do, what he can do out of play action, and what he can do throwing the deep ball outside the numbers. He's still very, very good at both of those things. The problem with Russell Wilson is that he does not like to throw to the middle of the field. He only threw to the middle of the field 78 times last year. It's not a lot. It was one of the fewest amount in the league. And so Arthur Smith, the new offensive coordinator, likes to throw to the middle of the field. And so that, to me, I've said it before, I'll keep repeating it. How is that going to work? And then when you factor Justin Fields into the equation, it's Justin Fields probably more willing to throw to the middle of the field, but the intermediate numbers, like to the middle of the field in that 10 to 20 yard range, like last year was like a passer rating of like 55. The numbers were terrible. So you just begin to kind of wonder. And William, this is actually a really good comparison here. Russell sounds a lot like Kenny when you put it like that. He actually does. He actually plays very, very similar to Kenny. The difference is that Russell Wilson has way more arm talent and more athleticism than Kenny Pickett does. And he also has way more NFL experience. So he still knows how to break down defenses more than Kenny Pickett does. So you add veteran knowledge, better arm talent, which I don't think anybody's ever going to say that Kenny Pickett has like the most elite arm talent. I don't think that's like taking shots or anything like that. Listen, Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick as an NFL quarterback, and then also a 4th-round pick in the Major League Baseball draft in 2010 for as an infielder. The dude knows how to make all kinds of throws. He has natural arm talent that is transcendent over multiple sports at a professional level. Like, he has elite arm talent. And so you look at, he does the things that you wanted Kenny to do better than Kenny can do it. But the problem is that Russell can also be a bit skittish in the pocket, not quite as skittish as Kenny. He can be more skittish in the pocket. He can be kind of skittish in the pocket and doesn't want to throw to the middle of the field. So you kind of, it should be a better version of what we saw with Kenny Pickett. That's probably the best way to put it right now. So, yeah. And William says here, Kenny had no touch. Let's see. Here's the thing is that when Russell Wilson throws that deep ball, you can see the arm's not gone. Like, he can still heave it down there, but it also has a good amount of touch. He just throws a really, really good football. He just does. He always has. And that typically doesn't go away until the arm is completely shot, and Russell Wilson's arm is not shot. You saw that happen with Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger, he had that arm for forever. Once the arm injury happened, that's when you knew the arm was shot, right? And even when he came back, like, he still made certain throws. You were like, you don't look like a dude who just had arm surgery, like significant like surgery on his arm. But still, that's when you knew the arm was shot. When you have literally tendons rip off of your elbow, off of the bone, your arm's shot. It is. We haven't seen that happen with Russell Wilson yet. So, all right. Good show today, guys. Good show. I really appreciate you guys with all the conversation. More OTAs tomorrow. Corey should be here tomorrow. If we do the show tomorrow, I don't know if Ramon's going to happen tomorrow or Thursday. If whichever day the Ramon show is happening, we won't have a Southside beat. But No doubt one of the next 2 days we will be here. It'll be both Corey and I. It'll be at 4 p.m. Eastern because of OTAs. So it'll be a little bit, later than normal. But yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Looking forward to the next time we meet. Really appreciate you guys. Appreciate all the back and forth, all the comments. I'm sorry it's so hard to get to all of them when I'm running this by myself. So if I missed your comment, I'm sorry. It was not intentional. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate it. We'll catch you guys either tomorrow or Thursday. We'll try to keep you guys updated. Until next time, catch you guys on the flippity flip. Peace out.